What is going on, everybody? This is going to be another set 8 trait video. So this one's going to be about all things threatening. So basically, long story short, threats are kind of an interesting trait in the sense that they don't really have any trait bonuses, right? Traits usually give you, whether it be attack speed or some type of utility or something of the sort. And threats are basically their own thing in the sense that they are all powerful on their own and they don't need no trait to back them up. Because of this, they kind of are unique in general, and I think I'll kind of go through each individual unit, how you can utilize them, and potentially a comp you can use in the long run if you wanted to go vertical threat, which is possible, especially with a couple of hero augments and or a augment that gives you more health, like threat level maximum. Let's just jump right in here to the Mobilix page here. So it's important to keep in mind that there's realistically 3 tiers of threats just based off their cost alone. And the majority of what you'll be utilizing for threat is going to be the cheaper options if you're going to run them in most of your builds, unless you're obviously going vertical. So we'll start with Rammus here. Now, Rammus is a armor-based scaling unit. It's going to be one of your main tanks. It is also a stun in the form of a knockup. The nice thing about Rammus is that realistically, he's a mediocre tank in a lot of ways, but he's kind of willing to jump into the backline with his ability. And so I've had a couple games now in which I'll have a Rammus in the middle of the field, and during his ability, he'll jump and kind of land on most likely the most effective in terms of knockup amount. And occasionally that will mean he'll jump all the way to the back line. Occasionally that will mean he'll sit in the front line. But regardless, it's a stun, right? It also then is going to decrease the attack damage of the units that he knocks up, giving you a little bit more utility with him. Now, the next 3 cost unit I want to talk about is Chogath, everybody's favorite. I don't even know what the heck he is. Now, Chogath is kind of the opposite of Rammus. He scales off of magic resist, and he scales based off star level, as most things would, right? But his unique trait is that he gets mana reave when he uses his ability and hits an enemy. So this can be really nice if you can get your Chogath to hit their backliners and give you a little bit more of a delay in their ability power spikes, right? And so as you can kind of see the trend here, both Chogath and Rammus may not be, having their power-ups through getting active traits, but their abilities themselves and their base power is generally going to be of value. Right. Now we go into Velcos. Velcos is very similar in the sense that Velcos is in himself very powerful in that he has a built-in stun as well. So now you'll notice here 2 of your 3 cost threats are stuns. One of them is a mana reave. So you're seeing the utility built into these kits. Now the freeze being at 1.5, 2, and then 2.5 makes for a really annoying setup because Velcos targets the highest damage dealer with his stun. So they freeze the enemy champion with the most that's dealt the most damage, right? And so in 99% of scenarios, your Velcos is going to take out their carry and stun them for up to 2.5 seconds, which is an insane amount of time, especially in a TFT game, when fights can only last sometimes up to 30 seconds realistically for majority of fights are going to be done within 10, 15, 30. And so a lot of utility there, a lot of value in those stuns. Now, if you're going to run threats as a carry, I wouldn't recommend any of the 3 that you've seen here in Chogath, Rammus, and Velcos. Those I think are more your utility units and kind of make up for the stuns and delay, etc., that you kind of need, right? If you want to run a carry with threat, you're going to be looking at both Auriel Seoul and Belveth, 2 of the 4 costs. Now, Auriel Seoul is going to be a traditional AP-based scaling damage dealer. Realistically, there is some built-in utility, though, with Auriel Seoul as well, based on the fact that Auriel Seoul calls down meteors. Those meteors are going to apply a burn for 10 seconds. And then, as well as decrease incoming healing, just due to the fact that they're basically applying a wound as well. It creates a situation in which the meteor strike may not do the most damage, but it does enough damage combined with the burn and the wound to slowly bleed out a team. And if you have a good enough scaling, good enough augments to go with it, Auriel Seoul is probably your most consistent AP damage carry in all of Threat. Now, Belveth, on the other hand, is a AD-based damage carry. And I think Belveth is really nice for the simple fact of the matter of she kind of scales inherently by herself, just due to the fact that she dashes around and every individual hit gives her, every individual ability, gives her more attack speed. And then that attack speed gives her more fury attacks, which then in turn scales. So Belveth can basically become her own monster in the sense that you theoretically don't need Ginsu's to make her scale, but with Ginsu, she scales extremely well, and there's really no stopping her. She'll just start kind of going out of control really quickly and creates a fun little scenario where with her 2 range, you can get her to attack from behind your Chogath, Rammus, etc., and just get her to extreme attack for an extended period of time. I would say traditionally, Belveth is probably going to be a more consistent carry than Seoul, mostly because Seoul's targeting is a little bit suspect at times, in the sense that it's not going to always go for the kill, I've found when I've ran it in my games. It oftentimes is going to just use the ability, which works, but doesn't actually get you the kill sometimes. So unless you have like a secondary carry with your Seoul, you're just not going to often get the kills in time. But when Seoul does hit hard, it hits really hard. So it kind of depends. If you're facing a lot of bunched up comps and you're noticing that everyone's sitting in a corner all grouped together, Seoul's probably better. If you're noticing that they have large front lines that you need to scale and get through, Belveth is probably better. But again, it's all based on what augments you get, what the compositions are like in the lobby, and what your items are, realistically. And then our other 4 cost is Zac. Now, Zac is literally just a big meatball. The entire idea behind Zac is that he scales with his health. And so while Chogath scales with magic resist, Rammus scales with armor, Zac scales with health. Now, I'm not advocating putting 3 Warmongs on Zac's, but you could, theoretically. As Zac does deal damage based on his missing health, based on his health total, as well as gaining based on his missing health. So he technically speaking scales his healing as well as his damage based on the health you have him with. But when he dies, he splits into 2 smaller blobs with the percentage of the Zac's base health. So if you have a Zac with, say, 2 Warmongs and puts him up to 3,800 health, you're then getting 2 1,900 health to just chill on the board after, right? As well as they taunt enemies nearby them. So if you theoretically have a Zac in the front line that takes full aggro first, you could have then your secondary units come up, hit the wave after, right? I shouldn't say wave, hit the units that are pushing up after, and then have those baby Zacs taunt right after, right? So it creates a nice situation where I oftentimes, if I can, am putting more than 1 Zac into the build, even if it's a 0 itemized, right? Because it's 3 extra targets, right? 2 of which are taunts and just an extra target to start with. Though I'd argue, while Zac's utility is really great, I think Chogath, Rammus are better tanks altogether. Zac feels more kind of like a hybrid tank damage dealer at times because of the health-based scaling. Certain compositions, if they get going fast enough, will just burn through the health. There's really no resistances to them. That's also why, though, they recommend Gargoyle Stoneplate. Give you some resistances, give you some extra value, but I'm not really feeling it too much. Other than just like a taunt bot and extra units. Think of it like having a free 2 ZZ Rots. Is kind of how I look at it. And then that brings us to our 5 costs. Now, our 5 costs are not really carries, I would argue their utility, at least in Ergot, is a big stun. So we'll go Ergot first. Ergot basically scales off AD, but honestly, his biggest thing is that he sends like a tidal wave out, as well as can potentially give you some econ. Basically, wherever Ergot is, he sends a big tidal wave, knocks everyone forward towards you, meaning you can kind of dislodge some backline carries and bring them out towards the front line. It stuns them, as well as then you have a chance to dredge up gold. I believe it's a 12% chance, or 12% chance base, 15% on level 2, and then 100% on level 3. I think at the end of the day, he feels more utility based than a damage carry. He seems much more like a Rammus or a Chogath in the sense that he can do damage, yes, but he's not primarily functioned for damage. He's primarily functioned for utility, right? And again, that's kind of the overall theme of threat, is that they're utility based with damage potential, not necessarily damage based with utility potential, because they don't have any traits to go off of. Now, Fiddlesticks, I'd argue, is kind of the opposite. Fiddlesticks, I'd argue, is actually a carry. Fiddlesticks, I've had many situations in which if you can hit a fiddle on 7 or 8, just by accident, by luck or by crook, you hit a Fiddlesticks and you can itemize fiddle a little bit. Ooh, that's a spicy meatball is all I'm going to say. Fiddlesticks basically does not move at all. He sits there like a scarecrow until he's damaged. All right. So realistically, you want to have Fiddle in a situation in which he's targeted early enough in which he can deal damage without being fully aggroed, but not so early that he doesn't get much of his corrupted stacks. Now, basically how corrupted works is when an ally champion dies, he gains 15 ability power. So you technically scale off your teammate's death, right? And so if you have 7 units, right, you might want to have 2-3 of them die prior to Fiddlesticks going berserk mode. But once he falls below that 40% health, he's just going to go berserk mode. The other catch is he also would go berserk if all your allies die, which again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, just again, simply because he's not very tanky. As you can see here, his health numbers are pretty low. He does heal relatively well, based on just his abilities, etc. But I just don't like him to be, he's a midliner, he's a bruiser rather than he is a full backline or full front line. But Fiddle can definitely be a carry if you hit them. The problem is that I think it's really kind of comp based as well as lobby based. Excuse me, guys. No, it's really comp based as well as lobby based, depending on how you can really make them work. I've seen things like Archangels on him. I've seen things like Morello's. Jeweled Gauntlet seems really well because he's almost all magic damage. And so kind of depends on how you want to go about it. If you guys are interested, I will have like a rough guide on what I think itemization should kind of look like here, on like tactics.tools. And then kind of as I've been playing the games, I've been going through and maybe changing some things up and kind of going through and seeing, okay, this is what I think's best or what I think's worst, etc. And I actually think I'm going to be making a tactics.tools, not overview guide kind of thing, but kind of a quick tips thing one of these days, just because I think there's a lot of functionality and value in tactics.tools that a lot of people probably should be utilizing for the individual sets that you're on. Right now it's on 7.5, and so I probably am going to wait until they have like the top comps and all that kind of stuff available. Or maybe I do it prior to that, I'm not sure. But I think tactics.tool has just a lot of really great stats and things you can go through and learn based off of. And so because of that, I'd recommend really giving it a shot and paying attention to this. If it's not tactics.tools, check out Mobalytics, check out LolChess, check out any of the numerous amounts of MetaTFT, other websites. There's so many websites out there that conglomerate all this information. Use it. It's super helpful. If it was not for things like tactics.tools, MetaTFT, Mobalytics, Blitz, etc., like all of these tools, I would not be where I'm at in Masters. This is 100% based off the fact that I have gotten good enough based on the fact that I am willing to take some time and learn what's going on, learn what you need to know, looking through all this stuff, etc. So that's kind of it for me. I'm gonna call it good on this one. I hope this threat overview was good. I've been trying to like come up with ideas on like how to do some of this stuff. I am writing a lot of this stuff down ahead of time, so I might actually make like a quick, like, I don't know if I want to call it a like Excel sheet or something of the sort, but I might make an Excel sheet, I guess, realistically, a Google Doc, Google Sheets of units I would consider carry potential versus units I consider utility, and then units I would say are somewhere in between. Um, might do like a tank utility carry, right? In that order, tank utility carry. And kind of go through and just get like all the names of all the units and just kind of mess with them a little bit. And it might be something along the lines of I go name, utility, what's their utility? Name, carry, what do you carry with? And it might be something as simple as carry being attack speed, healing, tank item, right? For Belveth, you want attack speed, healing, tank item. Doesn't have to always be Ginsu's, right? We've talked about the fact that you can just do something that scales. So it could be RFC, it could be anything like that, right? Static Shiv even. Though it's not really much of an attack speed based thing anymore, but for 7.5, I guess it's more attack speed than it is an 8. But attack speed, healing, tank. Healing, crit, scaling. Something of the sort. Or crit, damage. Realistically, is all you really need here. Like something of the sort. So we'll kind of go from there. I'm excited though. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to absorb and talk about as much as I possibly can for set 8. My chat and I have been theory crafting a lot on Twitch. So if you guys are ever interested in coming in and checking out the Twitch channel, link will be down below. Outside of that, if you enjoyed this kind of content, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.